What's up, Moto Buddies? Mike here from Taco Moto Co. This is the Shop 2025 KTM 500 Exc-F. This is the bike that I go out and ride all the time and use as a test platform. This is kind of a crash test dummy bike for us in our development pursuits for all kinds of different products and features and options for KTM bikes. And so I'm pretty lucky. I'm super spoiled for choice. You know, I have the option and capability of riding basically any dirt bike out there. And I really come down to picking between two. Anytime I go out, it's always generally going to be on one of the two of these. So it's either this machine here, or I have a 20 through 23 generation 350 Exc-F. And there's some things about the chassis on the previous generation bike that I really like. And there's some things that I like about the new chassis. There's some things about the 350 that I find very favorable for certain conditions, and then the 500 class is for others. So I don't have a single favorite bike. I do have a single favorite platform, and it's the Exc-F. So that's the enduro headlight plated dual sport bike. That is a lock for me. I'm always going to choose that bike because it's got quite a few significant factors that lend itself to the type of riding I do. So for example, it has a 196 watt electrical system because I'm running GPSs and phones charging, headlights, electrical. I have there's an electrical demand that I put on bikes that I need that extra lighting capacity for. They also have a heavier flywheel, and so that means there's more trackability to the motor, less inherent likelihood of stalling. There's more gyroscopic effect inside of the engine. So those two things, that power, that flywheel, those are really important attributes to me. I like the gearing. I like the wide ratio gearing. I like that first gear is quite low on these bikes, so it'll tractor really well. Those are inherent things to the platform. It has a kickstand, it has an 18-inch rear wheel. It could go on, but I think you get the idea. I am not a fan and don't choose the SX-F and the Exc-F. They have their fans. I'm not one of them. I don't like the power hit. I don't like the power delivery. It doesn't lend itself to the type of riding that I do, and so I don't have that in my fleet. I don't have that platform. The 20 through 23 350 that I ride, I like that machine. I like the older chassis for certain reasons. And then I like that particularly in the 350 engine size. So if you ever see me out at an event or on the trail, I'm probably going to be on this very bike right here or that 20 through 23 350 Exc-F chassis. And I'll probably need to make a video highlighting that 350 and showing why that's my go-to bike for anything that's technical. So for any riding where other riders would pick a 250 or a 300 two-stroke bike, I'm going to ride my 350 Exc-F. And I'll deep dive into why that is my bike of choice for a technical, single track, hard enduro, all the stuff that you'd use a two-stroke 300 or 254. Why would I pick my 350 Exc-F for that same exact riding and ride the same trails right along with those other riders in those scenarios? So for all other type of riding, I'm gonna be on this 500. And so this bike is dirty because it just came back from Baja, Mexico. We spent a week down there pre-running and preparing for the Baja 1000. That's a whole other story. We won't get into that here. The reason I left it dirty is because I wanted to highlight a couple of the components on this bike and talk about why they're on here. If you watch any of our videos, you know that there is there's a hell of a lot of concern and deliberation and thought that goes into product choices that go on these motorcycles. I am not the kind of person that throws something on a bike casually, haphazardly. I don't fall into media hype or advertising claims. If it's on my bike, it's because I have really thoroughly and comprehensively tested it, examined it, explored it, and put it on my bike. And we've also put it on our site. I don't put things on our site that I wouldn't personally put on my motorcycle. Our philosophy is Baja tested, Baja proven. This is all Baja mud on this bike. So like I said, we just came back. So there's a lot of thought and care that goes into component choices. And I'll run through some of that right here on this bike. But this is just like evidence of the type of dynamic testing that we do. It's ongoing, it's never ending. motorcycles fuel basically our mental health program, my physical fitness program. My life revolves around dirt bikes to such a significant way that it's a key integral component to like who I am as a person, who I am as a business owner. All of the things I think that really matter at a very high level to me are influenced by dirt bikes. And I'm a very passionate advocate for riding motorcycles and getting people on motorcycles and keeping them on motorcycles. And the testing that we do is part of that whole comprehensive package. And so I'm going to walk you through why I have what I have on this bike, my feelings for this machine. So we picked up this bike, I guess it was late last year. And this machine has, let me try to catalog what this has done so far. I think this bike has 3 Baja trips on it. It has I did the Nevada rally experience with Scott Harden on this bike. There was another Nevada trip. This has been on 2 California desert trips, a lot of local riding and testing. This has been to Idaho. I think this machine went to Colorado. I think I rode this in Colorado. So this has a really broad spectrum and a varied experience on it so far in terms of like low altitude desert riding, high altitude alpine, Colorado and Idaho riding, and kind of everything in between. And so I really try to throw everything I can at a bike just to understand the dynamics of the performance of the different components at different altitudes, different ride conditions, ride scenarios, load factors. So, I mean, that gives you kind of an idea of what we're after and what we're chasing. So I guess if we'll start up here, let's go from the tires and work our way back. Now, you'll notice we have gold rims on here, and I'm just kind of a sucker for certain aspects of bling. I think I'm on record as saying I'm not chasing bling, and I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I'm a sucker for gold rims. I think they are just an absolute winner on any bike, and I particularly like them on the KTM. I think the orange, black color scheme of the graphics and the gold wheels is an absolute knockout. So I know it's vanity, but I laced up some gold hoops on here. These are the XL, I guess these are the Tuskegee, and I know you're going to flame me in the comments because I think I'm saying that wrong, but these are not the like AC60s. I probably said that wrong too. These are the more standard duty version, and they're just great, and I love them, and I don't care that it's a vanity component. I'll stand by it. Haha. So I've got the Tractionator. So the tire on here is a Motaz Tractionator. This is the Enduro ST, and it's the 90 size. So this is the fatty, and it's worn for sure. I've probably this is just a guess. Now this tire has been on multiple bikes. This wheel setup, initially I put it on my 24 Husky 501, and it ran a bazillion miles. And then now I've got it on this bike, and I don't mind a worn tire. I am happy to ride a worn tire because it's loose. It doesn't bite great. It doesn't hold a corner really great. And so I sort of do that as a ride training exercise to improve the rider. I have spoken to, and you know, flame me if you want to in the comments, because there's reasons that this is a bad idea. Riding kind of a worn tire is a little sketchy and could be a little dangerous, and I understand that. But it also, again, like I was saying, it allows you to, it means you have to manage the power, manage the weight and the dynamics of the chassis over the drawbacks of the tire. And so it does require more attention and more rider skill to offset that. So that's sort of what I do as far as like an older tire. As soon as the tire gets to that point where you probably should change it, many times I continue to ride it for that very reason. So to me, this is kind of like a training tire. Inside of there are moose balls, and they are at about half life. So I would say this tire is probably about 80% worn, roughly. And the moose have more to go. The moose are maybe like 50% in terms of like squishability. And I could, but I'm not going to. Like, I could pull this wheel and then cram a few more of the moose ball chunks in there to stiffen up or plump up the feel of the moose. I think that this Moose right now feels at about 12 PSI roughly. And you can see these little rubber kind of marks on the rim are where the tire has I've had some impacts or some reasons for the tire to fold in a little bit and contact that. And so if I take a big rock hit right now with this Moose sort of in its condition, I'll feel that in the rim. There is less rim protection than I had when the Moose was more plump, but the traction is unbeatable. It's really cool. So I really am dancing that knife edge of having great hard enduro type of traction with then losing a little bit of that rim protection. So you're just sort of balancing those variables, and those are just all sliding scale decisions that you make as you wear a tire, wear a Moose. When do you change things? When do you make adjustments? And I'm just going to keep on keeping on this setup that I have right here. Something that I talk about all the time are these Acerbis. I think they're called the Z-Mud. These are fork gators. And here's a really solid example of why I'm such a fan of these. We used to, when we'd go down to Mexico all the time in larger groups, almost every single time we'd have somebody who'd blow a seal. They'd have seal problems, seal leaks. They'd drain out all of their fork oil, and in some instances, if it was here on the left-hand leg, it would run down and then it would saturate the brake pads, and you'd have a whole drama show of dealing with all of that, and the suspension feel of the bike would be thrown off. And then you have a rider who's lost confidence, and the psychology of the ride experience plays a huge role. Your self-confidence on the bike plays a huge role in your performance. So all of that factors in. Now, since we started using the mud gators, I have yet to personally, and I used to have seal failures on occasion, and it's gone. It's absolutely disappeared. I no longer have seal failures. And why we use these over any other option is they don't impart any stiction into the fork assembly. So the lower stanchion, as it slides through the upper part of the fork, there's no physical contact between this gator. This just floats. There's a neoprene piece here that goes to the bottom of the fork, and the very bottom of the fork is pretty much right there. And you throw a zip tie on there. This thing, you have to remove that red wear collar. And so that red plastic band around there, all that does is that just allows a sliding friction point between the aluminum of the fork leg and then the guard here. If this thing is going to deflect and touch, it'll just rub on that. It's just a wear component. And so now this could rub against the neoprene here. And that's kind of what the zip tie does. The zip tie can act as like that slide surface, and it holds this on here as well. And you can replace all of this, and you can take these off. So they zipper, and you can pull this off. You can hose it out if you wanted to. I don't think I ever do that. I don't really care. When we pressure wash this bike, obviously it'll clean the outside of this. Now let's take a peek underneath. We've got a little bit of mud that's accumulated down here at the bottom, and that's not a concern. What is a concern to me is how we are absolutely clean. We're flawlessly clean all the way up. There is no mud that's worked its way up into the top of these gators. Like I said, any little bit that's way down here on the bottom, it's just, I don't really care. I'd have to bottom the fork out, and you can see that I have not bottomed out. This little sloppy mud down here is just what's like danced around at the bottom of this thing, and I haven't got into the stroke far enough to even get down in there. And that's such a tiny amount, that's so insignificant that the fork seals would way more than be able to accomplish sweeping that away. So these things pay for themselves. I think they're like $30. It's just an absolute no-brainer. Why wouldn't everybody put these on their bikes, especially anybody who's doing off-roading in any wet or muddy conditions? It rained quite a bit down in Mexico this last week, and the Baja 1000 finished up in the rain, cold, wet rain. Those guys are animals. So that's kind of my piece on those fork gators. You'll see that I've got this is the rally cable brackets here, and so we have a bracket on the bottom, and then there's one up here on the top. And what this does is it anchors this hose, the brake hose, so that it doesn't swing around and dance around and then knock into my phone or any of the other electronics that you might have mounted on your bars. And so this is just really simple. It just captures it here, and then the hose and then the speedo cable, they just flex out there the same way a rally bike does, the same way the Yamahas do, the same way the adventure bikes do. And everybody in the comments who says you're going to catch that on a bush or a branch and rip it off, while that's entirely possible, you could also fly off your bike and die. I mean, there's just so many what ifs in life. I try to mitigate my risk. I try to mitigate the negative circumstances that might happen on a ride scenario, but yet I need to go out and do and experience the thing. So I have yet to personally experience any issue with this whatsoever. And we've sold hundreds of these probably and have no rider feedback with any negative experience so far. If you have one, let me know. Let me hear about it. If you have a Yamaha, if you have an adventure bike, if you have a rally bike, I mean, the same cohort of people would have the same scenario where they could get into a situation where they would catch that and would damage that. So the sky is not falling. So do with that what you will. These Canyon Dancers are absolutely clutch. They allow me to capture the bike quickly and easily. I don't have on this machine. Now, if you've seen our builds, you'll see that I'm a big fan of like the XC Gear Mako 360 bar mounting system. I don't have that on this bike because what I've done on this machine, my strategy has been to phase in upgrades and changes and mods incrementally, because I rode this bike completely stock for a long time, dozens of hours. And the reason is because I really want to have a full comprehensive understanding so I can have these conversations with riders, and I do all the time, about what mods are needed and necessary, what constitutes like essential upgrades, what are like a phase 1, a tier 2, a tier 3, and so on. And where do you spend your money? How do you spend your money? What matters? What doesn't? What matters the most? You know, all of those questions being answered. I want to really understand that at a high level. And so on this bike, I opted to, instead of just, which I sometimes do, grab a new bike and then just throw everything at it all at once. On this one, I wanted to have that incremental phased, because I hadn't done that on the 24 chassis yet. I think we have 3 of these new chassis bikes. And when we did the other 2, the shop bikes, we just did everything at once. And on this one here, I felt like I wanted to have that experience like I just described. So I don't have a lot of things that will eventually get on this bike, and the bar mounting system is one of them. All of that to say, I guess I went on a little tangent there. Sorry about that. The reason that the Canyon Dancers make so much sense is because when you have a bar system on there, whether it's the Mako or the BRP or flex bars or whatever, do not throw a cable tie, or not a cable tie, a tie strap over your bars and cinch down on the bar, on the rubber dampers of the bar system. Use something else. And so whether that means you use the little holes, and I don't know if you're going to see that, but there's right in front of the fork at the upper kind of right, there's a little hole there. Now, how would you get to that hole with your hook? Here it is right there. How would you get to that hole to put your hook on this bike? I don't know. That's really tough with this wing on there. Or you could loop your soft loop around there, but man, these Canyon Dancers are just clutch as far as I'm concerned. Love them. Every bike, every time. And I prefer them down here on the bottom, because on the top, they will come in to, if you have an aftermarket tank like this at Cherubies, there's just no room in this pocket for that thing to live. So it has to go down on the bottom. Some people will say that on some of the older, this is the new style triple clamp, but on the other triple clamp, the older gen, these bolts, these capture bolts were a little recessed in, and then this will sit proud on top of the machining of that triple clamp. And some riders will stack some washers in there to try to offset any, there's no like walking or just skating around of this thing. Once you torque it down properly, it stays. But some riders will put like a little spacer shim on the previous generation. So that would be, I think the ones that did that were like the 12 all the way through the 23s. Just a little side note. Maybe we could address that later if we do a review of my 23 bike. We'll kind of talk about that. Moving up here to the suspension. So the new Exc 48 suspension is the best enduro suspension KTM has put on a machine since the 12 through 15 generation bikes. The dual chamber, open chamber forks of that class bike were fabulous. They were terrific, and everybody who rides off-road and hard enduro favors those. Now, when they went away from that in 16 all the way up to 23, man, they had some weird stuff. They had the Exc-4, no, the 4CS. Correct me in the comments if I didn't say that right, but I think the 4CS. They've had the the Explorer 48s, and I was never a fan of any one of those. And we would go in and then swap out the internals. So this new generation fork, this exact 48, is money on. I am a big fan of it. It, however, has some, and for most riders, it is great. And clicker settings will get you basically in the pocket for most riders in most instances. And there's a lot of people out there that should not be doing anything to their suspension other than doing spring changes for weight, which you would do anyway, regardless of what suspension you go with. But outside of clicker settings, most riders are going to find that will get them in the pocket. And on the stock forks that I had on here, I think I went out on the compression. I think I went out about 9 or 10 clicks, and then I went in I went out on the rebound to about 4. So like 9 and 4 was really the sweet spot as far as I was concerned with the stock setup. So we are an Intec. We work with Intec USA, and we're a DelSaggio dealer. And this is the Sphere 3 cartridge. So this basically replaces the internals all the way down to the bottom. Everything inside of here has been replaced out. It's a little bit like an insert. The WP, I think they're the 6500 series inserts. That's basically what this is. This is the DelSaggio version of that, and it's got a upgraded, everything in there is upgraded components, tolerances, coatings. All of that is like, first class all the way. And so we've done a lot to work with the tuning of this fork, and it's something that we're going to offer sort of like as a tacomoto setup. And I am the test rider. We've got other people that will test these, and I've just found these to be absolutely tremendous. I only need to move the clickers on this about 5 or 6 from going from hard enduro, ultra hard enduro to like dual sporting. 5 or 6 clicker settings in between there gives me the range I need for all of those type of riding conditions. So I'm a big fan of these. It's a nice improvement over stock, and so far I have nothing but good to say about this. We're continuing to tweak and refine those settings. We're not quite there yet, but we're as close as we've been. I'm really happy with how those work. I swapped out the grips because I like this OD Rogues. They're just a little thicker, and they have some air cushions in here, or just little air gaps, so I can get some air flowing through to dry my gloves out. And they are about as squishy as you can possibly find. So big fan of these grips. This is the Tacomoto light switch control, and so this allows me to turn off the headlight, and then it gives the control here for the turn signals. So these are the cascading front turn signals, and they have the very bright and intense white run light. And so that allows also me to get rid of that really big fat OEM headlight switch. And then you'll notice that, let's talk about map switches really quick, and then I'll drop back to headlights. So I have the KTM OEM map switch here. Over here, look at this side. So we have the AIM. This is the new generation AIM map switch, and then I have the GET switch. So the reason I have all 3 map switches on this bike is because at any one ride, I might have an AIM, an OEM Tacomoto Reflash ECU, or the GET on a bike, and we'll be doing map testing and map development, and so I'll need any one of the particular map switches. So we would, like if I was running a stock ECU, we'd unplug those and vice versa. And so we just plug in whatever's needed for that particular ride. And I can get away with having all these switches. Now, you're not going to have 3 map switches on your bike. That's stupid. But we do, for the reason I just described. But if you wanted to have other types of switches, so you might have auxiliary switches or whatever, like I said, getting rid of the stock switch frees up a bunch of space, which lets this go on there. And if you have our Taco Flash, you'd want to put this on here, and that would give you this space. And because you have space now, you can, and I probably will, I would like my clutch to be out just a little bit farther. I don't think I ever reset it after I took off the OEM switch. So I'd like that to come in a little closer. I have the ability to do that now. On this side, we put on the Heimdall. This is the Heimdall start kill switch, and it mounts here to the throttle cable perch, which freed up the spot here, which is where any of the aftermarket kill switches would have gone. I have the AIM switch here, and then I've got the the get, and then the aim lives over here. So this Heimdall is an absolute space saver, and I just love the tactile feel of the switches, and I love having it right there at my thumb for start and kill. So big fan of this, giving me all these map switches. That's the bar setup. Dropping back to the headlight and the lighting control, this is the Moto-minded, oh, and I don't remember if this is the Hydra. I don't think that's what it's called. Chris has some funny names for his new generation lights. These are two Baja Designs S1 light units. The bottom one here, you'll notice it has they call this the trail pattern. So it has a little focal point here in the center, and that's your spot. And then these vertical bars out here give you a wide flat visibility, and then at the very top you notice they have 3 little horizontal bars, and that gives you a little more throw out pattern in vertical configuration. And so this thing is it's carrying a lot of work. It's doing a lot of work. This up here is the spot. This is going to be your low, this is the high. So when you're in low mode, this is off. When you're in high mode, this turns on, and you have both going at the same time. What a killer light setup. I'm a big fan of it. It's very low draw. It's 38 watts. That is surprisingly low for the amount of light that it throws. I rode this there were 2 different times I rode this at night, and it is a massive upgrade over the stock light. And the performance of this is terrific. I would rate this at about a 45 mile an hour light. I rate a light based on the speed, at the night speed that I feel comfortable riding in varied conditions. So varied conditions would be a road that undulates around, it's up, it's down, left, right. Throw in some trees, throw in some wide open expanse. So it's just different types of varied conditions. And so I'm gonna call this a 45 mile an hour light. The OEM light for me is like a 30 mile an hour light, 25 to 30. I do not feel, even in high mode, I don't feel super confident and comfortable pushing speeds much higher than that. On open flat road, it's absolutely acceptable. But that's my speed rating. Now, my favorite all-time light, single all-time light, is the Ruby R7, and that's like a 68. How many watts is that? Significantly more, double the amount of watts, if not more. And they've been a little hard to get. There's just been sourcing issues with different manufacturers. Quite a few different manufacturers have had some problems getting product in, and so I don't have a Ruby R7 right now to throw in this bike, and so I went with this as a test, and I'm very happy with, for the money, for the watts, for the performance, really happy with it. And these are movable, and so I did spend quite a bit of time playing around with this while riding, trying to get those angles set just right until I found the sweet spot, and right there is where it's at, and I really like it. So I'm a fan of that light. Low cost, low power draw. I like it. Like that light. Let's see, is there anything else to talk about up here before we move on as far as bars and controls? We've got a ball here. We made this ball, and they're not on our website, but we need to put them up there. And we did a type 3 ultra hard anodizing on there, and we've got the we have the double take mirror, and then this is their arm and their mirror. This is the double take arm, and then Peak Designs. So I pretty much have used every single phone mount out there, and I have 2 favorites. My most favorite is probably this Peak Design, and the GPS that I use is a cell phone. I use an Android rugged waterproof phone that I get on Amazon. They're basically like a $99 construction worker grade Amazon or Android phone rather, with no SIM card. I don't have service on them. And I load OnX. I have an annual subscription. I think it's like $20 to OnX. And I save all my routes there. I trade maps with people there. I use it for navigation. I download satellite imagery and load that into the memory of the phone. It is my absolute go-to way to navigate. And I always bring 2 with me, because we've had and seen experiences where a rider will lose one, break one, it could fail, and then I have the second one as a backup. And it's so small and thin, it doesn't take up a lot of room. I used to ride the Garmin Montana, and I would have the one I had on the bike, and then I would have a spare. Well, the spare is big and heavy and takes up room. And so it's just been a nice upgrade to get away from a old school GPS device to an Android phone. And the Peak Designs, the phone that I use has a case that has it's in the It's at home. I should have put it on here, but anyway, the phone mounts on here. It clicks right into these little metal tabs. There's no plastic. I know there are fans of other types of, there's a blue, I can't think of the name of it, but there's a similar product out there and it's blue and it has 4 little plastic feet. Don't use that. We've seen those break. I've seen guys lose their phone. So I've yet to have a failure because these are metal retaining capture clips. And then there's a magnet on here. So between the magnet and the clips, fantastic capture here. And I can't say enough about that. The other phone mount that I like a lot is the Mob Armor. And it's more of a universal and it has a little sliding thumbnail catcher deal. And that's a great setup as well. I think I prefer this over it. One thing I don't love is the cushioning, sort of damping bracket here. Now I know why they have this, and it's so that you can avoid, if you use a fancy phone, the killing the camera, the GPS chip or the camera. And I don't care about losing a camera on that cheap Android phone. This makes it a little hard to see when you're, bouncing down a road and this thing's vibrating, the bike is vibrating. My eyes aren't great looking at close up, and I don't wear glasses when I'm riding, and so I don't love this. I'm gonna switch this head out to a rigid powered one so that I can power this into the bike. And it's one of those proximity chargers, so it's like a touch charger, not a plug-in. I don't have a cord plugged into the phone, but this base will be powered and then the phone will touch charge once it's clipped into there. So I need to change all that out, but that's what I'm using for right now. I think we've covered everything up front. One thing I don't have on here yet, these are right now the stock radiator stick guards, and I'm gonna put on the Emperor radiator guards. I just have been a little bit lazy, haven't put those on just yet, but I will. And then also I'm gonna put on, well, look, I'm not gonna tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna talk about the bike as it sits right now in its current state. Some of the stuff you can see, like we've got a molecule skid plate, love that, favorite skid plate, Tacobout on the oil filler cap that's metal, so it's not gonna break like the plastic cap, and you're not gonna have a situation where we have seen it, where you crack the, in one time we had a guy in a Baja race, he lost his cap, cracked it, and then the oil came out, seized a motor. And in here I have the heat shielding that keeps that heat loading out of the shock oil. Now, interesting down here, take a look at this. These are the Factory Motion Pro foot pegs, and I'm a real fan of these suckers. So they come in 2 different pad lengths. This is the ADV, I think it says it right here, yeah, so the ADV versus like the standard one, and the ADV just has a longer foot ped. The width here is the same, but this is longer. They do 2 things for me. They allow the flex forward. There are times where you might be in a hard enduro situation where you need to really get fore or aft on the peg, and this lets you do that. The other thing and so what happens here is this thing pivots a little bit, and then that articulation allows more and flatter contact between your boot and the peg. And for me, over time, that means I get less of a hot spot on the bottom of my foot. I seem to have that happen to me. Maybe that's me, I don't know if anybody else does, but I get just sort of like little wear spots or hot spots or sore spots on the bottom of my feet from a standard non-pivoting peg, and I'm forward on, so to give you a visualization, it would be like your foot is like this on the peg, and that pinpoint contact causes me that issue that I talked about. So if this peg rolls forward and then maintains a flat contact with my boot, these give me less fatigue on my feet. The other thing they do is this rubber damper here isolates away some of the high frequency vibrations, and so these are a damping foot peg. So it's 2-in-1. Love them. They're great. There is some vulnerability with the articulation. I was in Baja a couple years ago, and we had some hard enduro stuff we were on, and I ended up breaking one. I credit that. I would say that's my fault. We have broken. I've been on rides where we've broken every single foot peg there is. We've broken stock, we've broken promoter billet, aluminum. We have never broken a stainless peg, like a stainless aftermarket. So a stainless Promoto so that Promoto that I just mentioned we broke, it was aluminum. Never broken off an aftermarket stainless, whether it was Promoto or IMS. Those have never broken clean off, but we've bent them. you twist them back, the bike is obviously still rideable. And so whenever you do an aluminum peg, you're vulnerable to breaking it off. And I've broken every aluminum peg out there, either myself personally or with others, and we've broken off the OEM, but never those other stainless. As we move back, I don't have much going on in the rear other than the rear rim, like we talked about. Oh, something here. These are the Tacomoto, the bearing caps. I've got them on the front and the rear. And what's happening with these things is these are billet aluminum and they cup over the top of the bearing. And so you can see that the bearing race is completely sealed away from dust, grit, mud, rocks, and pressure washing. That's really the key here, is now we can just blast this bike to get all this crap. Look, they got mud everywhere. There's some ocean sand in there. The thing is a disaster. And so we can hit that with a full power pressure wash and be very indiscriminate and not have to worry about blasting those bearings and causing any damage there. In this tire, this is the Motaz Tractionator. This is the IT, so it's intermediate terrain. The front's a little softer than the rear. And you can see that this thing is getting worn down pretty well. So it was not great, this traction. I did a couple of hill climb sections that I struggled to get up. And so I'm obviously yielding some of that drive. But like I said, it's more of like a training tire now. But I also like having a drift tire. This thing cuts loose, it breaks loose really quickly when you're in a flat, graded gravel kind of road situation, and we got into some of that. Man, on the back end of this bike just is it's a drifter, and that's pretty fun. So there's, everything's trade-offs, right? Kind of already covered that. Inside of here are moose balls, and these are pretty flabby. They have let me guess how many miles this tire has on it. By now it's easily got 1,500, if not a little more. The moose is about the same. There's a considerable amount of highway miles. I've probably got 400 miles of straight up highway, and that means like pavement, including interstate. I've done some interstate 10 down in Arizona, interstate 15 here in Nevada, and then a lot of pavement. So this thing has held up really well. I'm very satisfied with the tire wear, the moose wear. I have no complaints whatsoever based on mile and then the abuse of this thing. I could stand to pull the moose out. I don't think I would pull it out, but what I would do is dismount this tire and then shove in another moose ball or two, and that would plump this up, because this tire feels about 8 psi. It's really, really soft, which I love. I love that for the hard enduro riding. So that's kind of my update on the tire. Graves, this is the black, it's the quiet insert, quiet core. And so far, this is my single favorite muffler I've put on any of the KTM big bore bikes. It's the Graves quiet muffler. Really like that a lot. Got the enduro plate back here. I cracked this off. This was a rider issue. It's not really a function of the plate. Everything breaks, especially when you beat it up really bad. Jesse has a great warranty on these. I'll hit him up. He probably would sell me another one at a discounted price. It's just a goodwill gesture, and I'll see about that. Talked about the bearing caps back here. I think we can move forward. I have yet to remove this dorky thing. I know. Just haven't got around to it. Don't have a dome. Well, okay, I'm going to stop talking about the stuff I will be doing. Let's keep focusing on what we got. We got the Tacomoto oil filter. This is the static magnetic oil filter, and we're doing about 60 to 70 hour oil changes on this bike. Inside of here, I have the PC Racing filter skin, PC Racing base gasket, and then up top, kind of as we wind this out, I have the XL size seat concept seat. I switch back and forth between the standard comfort size and then the XL. On this ride, I should have gone with the standard size, the comfort size. This XL was a little too wide, so when I got in some of that hardcore downhill stuff, this was in the way, and it was a little bit annoying. You could deal with it. I dealt with it. It's not that you can't ride the bike and you can't hard enduro the bike. It's just something that I was aware of. Again, I would have rather have put the standard width on there, or the comfort width. This is more of like the true dual sport type seat, so anything a BDR or overlanding, that's the ideal seat for that. Then up here, we have our dual snorkel system. This is the one that I have a bazillion miles on. I've been riding this thing for a long time, and I've cycled this tank all the way down to full empty and full many times, and it's so satisfying to draw the fuel all the way down to just an inch or less, and to be able to get all that gas out of that tank. It's just a great feeling to do that. And then we have the ECU, so got to get ECU system in here. And then this is really cool. My buddy Derek Harris from HP Racing made these for us. It's a ECU holder that has a little slip deal here for the Wi-Fi module, so it's all tucked in here nicely on top of the electronics tray, and that's a really cool thing. We are going to start offering those on the website soon. So with that, I think we're done. If you noticed anything on here that you saw and you have any questions about, let us know. Hit us up in the comments. But this is the bike up to this point. How many hours? We have 28 hours. We'll call that 29 hours. So I've changed the oil. I did the break-in. We did a dyno break-in on this bike, and then changed the oil. And so I think I'm still on the first official oil fill. So we got rid of the break-in oil, filled it at 1 hour. So this oil has 28 hours, whatever, something like that. And I'm gonna keep running that. I'm gonna probably push this to about 40 or 50. Because I've been doing a lot of hard enduro, I might even shorten that a tiny bit. A lot of dust down in Baja. So some of the conditions that this bike has seen are not in the pocket for pushing oil life into that 50, 60. So even though I just said that a minute ago, I think I'm talking myself out of it. We're gonna push this now down to maybe now. You know, what the hell? I might drain that oil, send it in for testing, and we'll see what Blackstone. I always send my oil into Blackstone to get validation, testing and validation on it, and keep those records on the bikes. I think I forgot to mention the Durtrix rear sprocket with the titanium bolts. Look at that chain. So what's going on with this? This is the OEM chain, and I have found that they are not super rust resistant. Now this rust is superficial. It's 100% superficial. I've lubed this chain. I continue to lube this chain, and I'm an advocate for lubing chains. There are arguments that go both ways. I lube chains. I use what the hell stuff is it? I think it's a 3M Teflon. It's an industrial, my favorite chain lube is this 3M industrial chain lube Teflon type of product. It doesn't do a lot for rust prevention. And I don't care about the rust. I mean, it looks bad, but the chain performs within spec. It's not stretched. We have a measuring tool that I check it from time to time. So other than the cosmetic issue with it, it's in spec and it performs fine. If you're paranoid about rust, which I accept that some people would be, you could clean that, and there are those chain brush kind of scrubber deals that you could get in there, and then use some, and I don't know, maybe in the comments somebody could kind of inform as to the specific products and method you'd use to change that out. Now some people would say, well, that chain's, it's done, replace it. I'm not going to. I'm going to continue to use it. The aftermarket chains tend to be way more rust resistant. So like the DID chains, which I've got on other bikes, we'll get some saltwater spray. Now I'll ride these bikes. I ride my bikes on the beach in Baja. I don't drown them. I used to. There used to be a day where I took way more risks and got way into more challenging situations. In fact, I've swamped 2 bikes in the Pacific Ocean in Baja, and that's a whole nother story for another time. So these bikes now anymore, I don't get them drenched, but if a wave happens to come up on the beach and I sort of cut through a little bit of that thin water up at the top, I don't sweat it and don't lose any sleep over it. And so that's what's got the rust going on with this, is just a little bit of that shallow beach water. And Again, I described how I'm going to treat this and what I'm going to do to continue riding it. But when it's time, when this thing does start to show some signs of stretching, then I'm going to swap it out and I'll go with the DID. And then, like I said, those DIDs are much more resistant to any of that superficial rust, cosmetic rust. Right now it kind of looks gold-ish with the rust on there if you stand back far enough. So that's an overview of this bike. It's just terrific. I would rather ride, again, like I started out, I've got a whole fleet of bikes and there's some standouts and there's some great machinery there. But at the end of the day, this is the bike I'm going to pick for any riding that is not hard enduro technical single track. So hit us up in the comments with any suggestions or any of your observations or feedback, and let us know if you'd like us to consult with you on putting a bike together, speccing out a bike, building a machine. We do that here at our Vegas shop. We do dyno break-ins, dyno testing, dyno tunes, pretty much anything and everything you might need, suspension. Let us know. We're happy to help get you figured out, get you pointing in the right direction. Like, subscribe, go out, get some adventure.